You know how sometimes these global situations feel just incredibly complex, and you wish someone could just, I don't know, boil it down for you? Well, today, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're taking a deep dive into a really critical security crisis unfolding in West Africa. Specifically, we're focusing on Burkina Faso and the wider Sahel region. Frankly, very concerning event and its broader implications.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here, I think, is how this single recent attack isn't just another headline. It's actually a stark illustration of, well, deeply rooted instability. And also the strategic motivations of these armed groups and why this region is unfortunately becoming known as, well, the epicenter of global terrorism. We really want to help you understand the underlying why behind what you might see in the news.
Exactly. Our mission is simple. Give you a clear, concise understanding what's happening, who are the key players, and what makes this situation so complex, so critical. It's all designed to help you quickly get up to speed on this vital topic. So, to really get a handle on the current crisis, we need to zoom in on a specific event, a recent, pretty horrific event that really put the spotlight back on Burkina Faso. Now, Burkina Faso, it's a landlocked country in West Africa, and it's currently ruled by a military junta. Maybe just quickly for listeners, what exactly is a military junta?
Right. So essentially a military junta, it's a government that's formed by a committee of military leaders. They've seized power, usually through a coup, from the civilian government. It's often, a clear sign of significant political instability.
Okay, right. And in Burkina Faso, that instability was just starkly highlighted by this recent attack. Can you set the scene for us? What exactly happened, and why is this incident so significant?
Absolutely. So just recently, an armed group launched a major assault on a military base there. We're talking about around 100 attackers. They stormed the base, overwhelmed the defenses, and then, well, they burned and looted it. Tragically, 50 soldiers were killed. This attack, it's not just another incident. It feels like the latest really stark sign of the collapsing security situation in Burkina Faso. It represents an unprecedented rise in violence. I mean, we're at a point where armed groups control most of the country, especially outside the capital, Ouagadougou.
Wow. 50 soldiers. That's a staggering number for just one attack. So the immediate question is who? Who's behind something on this scale? Reports seem to point towards a group called JNIM. For listeners maybe not familiar, what exactly is JNIM and why are they such a big deal in this region?
Okay, so JNIM, it stands for Jemaat at Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin. It's quite a mouthful. It was actually formed up back in 2017. Several different militant factions basically came together, pooled their resources, you could say. And this group, it's directly linked to al-Qaeda. In fact, it is al-Qaeda's West African affiliate. And in recent months, it's become, well, the deadliest terror group in West Africa. You could argue it's one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous group, operating across the whole Sahel region right now.
Right. So it sounds like JNIM's growing influence isn't just a security problem. It's actually shaking up the whole political landscape, too. How has this affected Burkina Faso's leadership lately?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The deteriorating security situation, which is largely driven by groups like JNM, it's directly led to political shifts. We've seen back-to-back military coups in Burkina Faso because of it. And the current military junta, they've really struggled to contain the violence, much like, it has to be said, the civilian governments that they replaced. This just shows, how deeply entrenched and persistent this problem is. It goes beyond just who is officially in power. It points to these deeper systemic issues, things like corruption, a lack of real governance across huge territories, maybe even historical, ethnic, or social divides that these groups are really good at exploiting. It makes the whole situation very resilient, unfortunately, no matter who's nominally in charge.
That's a crucial point. It's not just leadership changes, it's these underlying vulnerabilities they exploit. And look, this isn't just happening in Burkina Faso, is it? We're talking about a much broader trend here. In recent years, this Islamist insurgency has grown significantly across the wider Sahel region. Can you maybe describe for us geographically where exactly is the Sahel?
Sure. So the Sahel, think of it as the vast strip of land. It stretches basically from the Atlantic coast of Africa eastwards across the continent. It forms a kind of transitional zone, between the Sahara Desert to the north and the more fertile savannas further south.
And its strategic importance, its global importance really, has just skyrocketed recently.
Oh, absolutely. So much so that the Sahel is now frequently called the epicenter of global terrorism. It tragically accounts for over half, more than 50% of all terrorism-related deaths globally. Just let that sink in.
It's just astonishing to hear that figure, especially when you think about the region's potential. I mean, the Sahel is rich in natural resources, right? things like uranium, gold. But despite that wealth underground, it remains largely impoverished on the surface. It seems like, well, a classic recipe for conflict.
It really does.
And insurgent groups have long vied for control there, for the resources, and political instability has just been rampant. It's contributed to several military coups across the region, not just in Burkina Faso. That said, you mentioned JNIM as a major player, but they're hardly the only problem, are they? There are many different Islamist militant groups operating in the region. So what's the dynamic? Are they working together? Competing?
Well, that's what's fascinating and also quite complex. While they do sometimes cooperate, on specific attacks or operations, they're also fiercely competing. They're fighting for control, for resources, obviously. And in recent months, we've seen a really concerning new strategic objective emerge. There's a definite push for access to West Africa's coastline.
Access to the coast. Really? That raises a pretty big question. Why is getting to the coast so vital for these groups, especially when many operate deep inland?
Well, access to the coast is, frankly, a potential game changer for them because it transforms these, often landlocked groups from being sort of localized insurgencies into potentially self-sustaining regional threats. It allows them to bypass state controls much more easily, tap into a global black market for more advanced weapons, for resources, and crucially, it lets them project influence far beyond their traditional strongholds. It just fundamentally escalates the whole conflict's scale and, well, its lethality.
Right. So securing that coastal access means essentially more money, more power, more weapons, more capacity for these groups. And from what you're saying, it sounds like the governments in the region, they have very little control over whether or not that actually happens.
Unfortunately, yeah, that appears to be the stark reality on the ground.
Okay, so we've explored quite a bit here. We looked at that specific deadly attack in Burkina Faso. We've uncovered the origins and influence of groups like JNIM. And we've tried to understand how this all fits into the bigger, much more complex picture of the Sahel region that's just absolutely vital for understanding global security today.
Exactly. And if you connect all these dots, right, the bigger picture really highlights how things like resource competition, political instability, even the strategic push for something seemingly simple like coastal access, they're all interwoven factors. They create this persistent cycle of violence and make governing these critical parts of the world incredibly challenging. Thinking critically about how these elements connect is just crucial for anyone trying to grasp these global dynamics.
So here's something to maybe leave you thinking about. We've talked about the significant role of natural resources like uranium and gold in the Sahel, and this constant struggle for control and power by all these different militant groups. What does this ongoing fragmentation, this competition for strategic assets like coastlines, what does it really tell us about how conflict itself is evolving in a region that's so rich in resources yet so impoverished? Makes you wonder how much the global demand for those very resources might actually be, well, fueling the chaos.